I'm like a dog with a bone at the moment, it seems, when it comes to council tax. I can't get away from it. I was watching a YouTube video from 1993, just popped up on my phone. Dave Allen at Large. I don't know if you remember the Irish comedian Dave Allen. He did a little piece about council tax, funnily enough, back in 1993. He was talking about the old rates, the old rate system where it's rateable on the value of your house, and people didn't like that, so they changed it to the poll tax. And oh my, the poll tax, that was dreadful. So they changed it back to something else called the council tax, which was based on the rateable value of your house. And that was very interesting. And it was he did a hilarious routine. I'll put a link in the description if you fancy catching up with a bit of Dave Allen from 1993. But he had some fascinating points to put. Well, I thought that's it. Surely we've done enough on the council tax. But no. Opened my emails and people were sending me some interesting articles. Have a look at this one from the Guardian newspaper. Dismay as households face 2 billion council tax increases. Now, unfortunately, I can't actually read the text there because it's a little bit blurred. But I think the headline in and of itself tells us the warnings that we've got. That we're going to be paying a lot more, if that is, you are one of these people who are paying. But notice there it says dismay as households face 2 billion council tax increase. Not people, not men and women, but households. What is a household? Is the house itself going to be paying it? Is the holding of the house paying it? Who's paying this? Is it real people or is it households? What does that mean? And is that even relevant? No, of course, it means you and I. Those people who have any kind of money in our pocket, or even if we have no money in our pocket, it seems that we're going to be paying this increase, this massive increase in it. And this is where the tax is incredibly unfair, because you have no negotiations on it. You have no ability to say, hang on a minute, I'm not sure I like some of these services that we've got. You're just being told that's what you got to pay. This is how a dictatorship works, isn't it? You're going to pay this come what may, or we'll take you to court, put you through a bulk hearing, a fraudulent hearing in a rented room at the side of the court, which is not a real court. It's a bias court. It's a kangaroo court, and there won't be no public record of it. And we'll get the council then to tell you that you owe us some money. Oh, and by the way, you have to deal with an enforcement agent straight away. And that's how it will work. And they'll come banging on the door with threats and menaces to take your possessions unless you actually pay. That's how the system seems to be. It's not a very nice system. It's not a very friendly system. It's not a very humane system. It's not a system that if I was thinking, do you know what, I want some people to help me run the country, and what I would need in my town is a bunch of people. What I need there is basically the mafia in charge. I'll vote for the mafia, effectively, is that what they seem to be, so that they can be rather brutish to me. That's what we seem to have in this country. I don't know whether you agree with me. Perhaps you think they are the most delightful people whatsoever that you've ever met. But there we are. Households will have, as it says on this Guardian post, 2 billion in council tax increase. But that's not just the only story going around in the Guardian newspaper. And I don't really normally read the Guardian, but these were sent to me. How about this then? It seems in the Guardian, ministers plan to push cash-strapped English councils to sell assets. Now, what do you mean by assets? Well, let's have a little look down here into the crux of the matter. Councils in England are to be encouraged to sell publicly owned buildings and other assets worth up to £23 billion under plans being explored by ministers to plug budget shortholds amidst the crisis in local government. And it then just goes on to tell us a little bit more about it. Under plans being examined by Michael Gove's department for levelling up houses, and it sounds to me like they're going to be levelling them down by basically bulldozing them. Housing and communities councils will be given greater flexibility to use money raised from asset disposals to meet their budget pressures, really. So in other words, the money that the government would normally give them from the Consolidate Fund, because when you pay your council tax, it doesn't actually go to the local government. Anybody who thinks that must be mad. It goes to central government. We know that. If you look at the House of Commons library and see in there that it goes all that, I can't remember how many billions it is, but it's quite a lot of money that goes in there, and it goes in and is calculated in the whole total tax, not locally for local things, money for local people. No, goes into the main pot and then is divvied back, and a certain amount is given back to the councils, as we know, with conditions attached, i.e., you need to bung in a bunch of 5G towers or some LTNs, or we're going to turn you into a 15-minute city. We're going to put 20-mile-an-hour speed limits up. We're going to have so many cameras left, right and centre that if you travel from one part of the town more than a certain number of times to another part of the town, we're going to charge you. Everything is about trying to extract money from the people who live in the town. A very friendly situation, I don't think. But anyway, that seems to be it. And you get no chance to sort of say, well, actually, I don't want these towers very much, thank you very much, these 5G towers radiating our brains. So they want to sell all this public building. But hold on a second, hold on. Are they the councils to sell? If they're publicly owned, you and I might consider ourselves, now depending if you get into legal and lawful, but let's not get into all of that, you might consider yourselves part of the public who paid for these things. If you've paid your council tax and the council are pretending that it actually goes to local things, you've got a stake in it, haven't you? You've owned a brick or two, or perhaps a door frame or something like that. Maybe you're part owned of a portico of a nice big Victorian not country, but town building. The town hall, for example. You might own a stake in that. They can't go round selling it because you paid for it, not them. The council didn't buy it. Effectively, you provided the money. So you have something in there. So I think you have something to say in all of this, don't you? You can say, actually, no, I don't want these things being sold off. I want the library, thank you very much, because I enjoy going to the library to look up information when I can't be bothered to do it on Google, or I want to borrow books, or I have meetings in the library with my friends, or any of these coffee buildings, any of these public buildings in which you might meet and greet or do things. The swimming pool, for example, might be another council building that you use. There may be a whole bunch of different buildings which are very useful that you don't want to see suddenly sold off to what? Corporations? Other corporations? We know the council's a corporation anyway, but they might sell them to more successful corporations who may in the end bulldoze them down and put some awful, god-awful edifice in its place. No, these public buildings, maybe the ones that have been built since the 1960s, they could be bulldozed down and got shot of, sure, because some of them are pretty ugly. But some of these are nice old Victorian buildings. I don't think these should be sold off. These are public buildings paid for, and they may not even be paid for by people in the last 100 years, let's face it. People from 100 years ago may have paid for these. The fact that the council might technically, on paper as it were, own them, but people have paid for them. So I don't think people can go round and just sell them willy-nilly because they're in trouble. And the other thing, of course, is that if these councils are all bankrupt and they haven't got any money and they're all a bit cash-strapped, maybe they shouldn't be in operation at all. If you're bankrupt, you shouldn't be in a position to buy or do anything, should you? You should be in the hands of the receivers. And in fact, people should be gathering together in their towns and villages and saying, actually, do you know what? If you're bankrupt, if you have no money and you are billions or millions in the red, actually what we'll do is we will offer you £1 and we will buy it. Debt-free, from this moment, we will collect the council tax and we'll make it a fairer system that people can afford, they can negotiate it. And if all the money from that locality actually went to the local area rather than going to the government, I'm sure that the people themselves could run their councils, get people who are not on massive, great big salaries, who have an agenda of net zero and whatever else, these C40s and all this sort of nonsense that wants to come in. The people of each and every town up and down this countryside could certainly run these things a hell of a lot better than the people in them are already. and they could make appropriate decisions and say, well, actually, I think it's important to make sure that we have the facilities that we want, and maybe we won't have all these 5Gs radiating people's brains and all the surveillance that's going on, or the preventing of people from travelling one side of the town to another so many times, or all those parking restrictions. Maybe we'll be relaxed about that. Maybe we'll drop the rates in the town centre so that businesses, family-run businesses, can come along, rather than more of these big chain stores coming in and squashing all the sole traders and the family-run businesses who may like to invest and do something for this town. Maybe a better system can come along if these big corporations are just left out in the cold, and that the councils are sold off to the people. That would be far better. And of course, we don't want to have the debt that they made. That's their problem. Let them wrap that up. We'll buy it for £1 and run it ourselves. I'm sure we can do a hell of a lot better. So it does seem that we're in for a rocky ride fighting against the councils. But in the meantime, we will fight as much as we can about this fraudulent council tax and the way it's collected and the way that you're suddenly thrown into a kangaroo court with bias. Absolutely we will. Because until there's a fair system, why should the people of any town up and down this land be the ones suffering at the hands of these rather awful corporations lent on by the government?